Okay, so we are now ready to roll. Let me just get this layout working. So today I've got Eric here already, which is awesome. Last week I was like, "Hey, eventually Eric's going to be here," and okay, and you never showed. We are now ready to roll. Lots of other people to show. Get this layout working. I got mute some channels here.
Yeah, I got some echo.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so weird. Yeah, I was just like, I was still planning on logging on, even though I had missed work, and then I just kind of like, I was asleep like out on my couch. So then I woke up at like, I think it was like at 4 o'clock, and I'm like, oh man, I missed the channel. Like,
that's all right. I'm glad you were sleeping while you're sick, actually.
yeah, yeah, worked out.
So today, last week when I started the session, I was like, "Oh, no, while we're waiting for Eric, I'd label off a few things." One of them was I wanted to talk about AI, and I never really specified what it was about or why. And in the end of the day, we had like a really busy session. We, covering all these things. We got to talk about a lot of good stuff. So I'm glad what we did. We did what we did, but I still wanted to talk about AI. And as we were getting closer to this session today, I realized that we really got to talk about this. So specifically, it's about Seedance 2.0, and a lot of people don't know what Seedance is and what it means. And it came out. It's not even technically officially out yet, but it's a AI that is doing video feeds. It's from China. This is information that I've been picking up on my LinkedIn threads. And the reason why I want to talk about it is because it does really good video, and it does it in a way that is art directable, which are really the two major hurdles that AI had to solve. Was A, don't make it look too goofy, and B, allow people to art direct it. So I think it's pretty substantially disruptive in the industry, and it definitely is one of those things everybody knew was coming eventually. It's just like how long before someone finally puts all the pieces together. So not only does it do like the videos, it does the audio, it puts sound effects in, it does lip sync, it does a whole bunch of stuff. So and it is very visually impressive. Like it can accomplish some pretty impressive stuff. So this is pretty devastating for somebody who's like trying to take a course, anything related or connected to this. And when I go through my LinkedIn feed, it, like every fifth feed is like someone trying out this video footage and figuring out what they can do with it. And to be fair, it's intimidating and scaring everyone in the industry too. Everybody is also like, wow, what does this mean? Where are we going with this? And there's been people like Matt Workman who used to always focus on virtual production and using aspects of Unreal to determine how virtual production will work in the context of like how do you quickly create content to be able to do stuff. Oh, Leon is here. Welcome. So what I was so I wanted to address it and talk about it because it's obviously a subject that needs to be discussed, and it will affect I think personally certain areas of the industry. And I think this area that it's most strongest in is live action and doing things that are like almost like B-roll film stuff that usually does require quite a lot of effort and work for somebody to set up these shots that might have complicated amount of cast and everything. But it does seem to work much better with live action, or at least most of the common use cases have been with live action. And so and the big difference is the fact that you get the director control behind it. So one of the first things that were released that came out with was with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, who were doing a fight sequence.
Level of AI. ByteDance.
And it was, I picked the video that is not the video. Let's see if I can find one that actually does have the video. And it's pretty good. It actually takes the two actors really well, wraps them around a fight sequence. And this whole sequence happens within a fairly minimal background. You've got, blocked out rocks and debris and stuff, and the two characters are fighting, but these are like actually not the actors doing it. So right away you're like, that's pretty impressive. That's definitely shocking for both the actors and also the VFX and the choreographers and everything like that. Turns out they did actually have a full-on green screen workflow, which is what this guy was trying to explain in the very beginning here. Although I don't know where he ever got into it, or maybe he didn't get into it. But there was, oh, I know, I have a whole thing on it here. Where is it? Got a bunch of posts. I'm spoiling all the posts that we were going to do. Oh, here it is. So there was a claim that, no, is this it? A claim that it was basically all done with a green screen. I don't know. I mean, and it makes sense. This is essentially how the whole concept works is you've got the ability to art direct what exactly it is, the footage you want to be able to display. And so, which is, I think, where the power of this tool is the fact that you can grab footage that exists and then wrap it around footage that you want to put onto it instead. Obviously, the big disclaimer here is the fact that there's copyright issues and these actors did not accept this or agree to this or anything. And I think they took the footage offline, from what I understand, because they got nervous about what it was potentially the ramifications legally of being able to do that. But I think that's a good explanation of how a lot of this footage is working. It's because it's taking content that you're trying to put together and it's allowing you to say, I want this image to look like this with different types of footage. And it does come with some weaknesses in terms of, if we start watching some of the footage that is created, it is pretty impressive, like visually off the bat. But from what I've been reading about different art directors is they get a whole set of shots in a folder that are all been processed by the AI, and they basically take it and composite it together and decide where the shots go and what goes and where. But you still get like a lot of continuity issues between the different cuts. Sometimes you'll find that the characters are flipped or there's weird instances where continuity, like there, where in a regular film you would have people that are very carefully making sure that each shot kind of makes sense, so you don't have this slightly jarring feeling that things are moving and shifting and changing. So there's a lot of directing that does have to happen, and for us to be able to, even if the images look correct, they still have to be directed in a way that feels like a good storytelling. And I think that's the essence of where my counter argument is going to be on for most of this stuff is that, when you're doing storytelling, it's a very difficult thing to do and achieve correctly. And you have to build up a whole bunch of different elements and concepts and principles to be able to have a captivating story. And that's what most of this stuff, if you watch it, it's just a whole bunch of AI slop, essentially, because it's all like pretty images and they're trying to like say something, but they don't have anything to say. And there's no real gravity to any of the situations. So those are usually the element of where these things fall apart. And I think that's, in essence, the longer road of where this is going is that, you're still going to need to make a good story behind what you're trying to do, aside from just pretty images. But as you can see, it's pretty amazing. Like there's a lot of different things happening here that feel like it's the continuity is pretty solid between the images. Like they still feel like they're the same people. There is some ability to do some stylized imagery. This just looks like gameplay footage, but that wasn't the intention, but that's probably where they're getting a lot of the reference footage for it. The whole concept of doing stylized and keeping continuity between the stylized elements is going to be a challenge for AI to do because, again, massively art directed. There's going to be a lot of themes and stuff that has to be held there. So I think there's a whole bunch of questions, but it's at this moment right now where everybody's trying to figure out what does this mean? Where does it land? And obviously the legality issues of what you're taking and where it's coming from is a big part of it. A big part of why this is working well is because there's a whole, from what I understand, there's a whole team of people that were taking the footage that they were referencing and very carefully tagging it so that it was not just like automatically but manually tagged, so that the AI that is pulling data from knows more accurately about when a shot is used in certain contexts and stuff. And that was required like humans to actually do that to make sure that it was done appropriately. So that's another thing that was a big difference between how things were maybe done with more of a programmer style aimed at trying to build content that can be directable. I don't know. I'm trying to open it. I want to figure out how to open this up to you guys. If you can give me some feedback. I know this is a sensitive topic across a lot of different departments, especially in the school, and it's a difficult thing to try and figure out. And I'm spending a lot of time trying to figure it out too, in terms of where it goes. There's a complete different argument when it comes to video games, which I think is where they talk about for sure. But when you get into VFX, film VFX, and stuff like that, there is a big question mark right now in terms of how much is this going to affect how much can you get away with? How close is this actually art directable, or how much is this just sort of like make me something cool and it makes it something cool? Like those are the real questions. Unless you actually get to try it out, you don't really know the answers to some of those questions. And currently, I don't think it's freely accessible to the public. I think only exclusive people get access to it. There's definitely some scenes here that it doesn't quite work very well. One of the interesting situations where somebody that I happen to know that I worked with previously, let's see if I can find his thread here. Here he is. He had someone he knew that had access to the tools, and he went and did and had them do a prompt. And he actually describes in here the full prompt that he did. I think its initial prompt was here, something like that.
For Gemini, for Google Gemini there. He says it under right there in the initial prompt fed into Gemini.
Oh, okay. Or a more descriptive one. But this was the prompt that he gave to Gemini to give to the other one, I guess. Yeah, it did seem like it was a little more lengthy. Anyways, if you just read the first comment here. Nope, that's not the right first comment. There's like a whole other conversation in here. Oh, I'm not sure if we're going to find it. But he... Now I kind of wish I read this, because I thought this was what I was looking at. 6 replies. Yeah, okay. Where's the blank story? Didn't match the prompt at all. Okay, that's what it was. So he did a prompt. He talked about the 2 guys fighting in the parking lot. He didn't mention anything about swords. But meanwhile, like, swords are a big part of the whole combat. So that's kind of an example of how, you say one thing and it doesn't necessarily realize that isn't what you're wanting. So there's a lot of misinterpretation of what it is. And those are the concerns that you might have if you're trying to actually art direct something. You can't go in there and video edit out the sword. It's a massive part of this footage. It's either use it or you throw it away. And that becomes a big question of like, how actual functional is this? Or is it just, you work with what it was given you? And is that good enough or not for people who actually want to make content with it?
Yeah, I definitely get like the argument of like, well, it's kind of like endangering, you already see like AI commercials and stuff on TV and stuff like that. Like, it's already being used, like you said, as a B-roll function. Like, obviously they're working on trying to replace, there's always going to be work to try and make things cheaper. So, if they can eventually use AI to do it, then they're gonna put money into researching that. But for the video game side of things, it's like they're not, because I think, kind of like you said with the whole sword argument here, it's like we're still kind of in the clear for video games as far as the gameplay part of it. It's
Oh yeah,
just I
it's a whole different battle altogether.
yeah, I think with video games, it's like I keep hearing like even with Expedition 33, like how they won Game of the Year and then they lost Game of the Year because I guess they used some sort of part to generate AI. So it's really unclear like what AI to use and what AI not to use as far as the
Yeah.
game stuff. Because it's like I guess the big thing right now is concept art. Because I've even used some of it, like, oh yeah, we'll just generate this, see what it looks like, see what it could look like, get a
Yeah.
rough concept.
Yeah, because at that point you're not really art directing anything. You're just like, I don't know, we're not at that stage right now. So it you don't have to worry about finessing it down to exactly what you're trying to you exactly to what you want to do, which is where a lot of this frustration starts. Because especially if you're trying to ask it to do things that it just doesn't know how to do very well, uh, it's going to give you all kinds of junk because it just doesn't know how to make it up. Parking
Right.
lots with swords and guys. I mean, like this is stuff that it can work with well. But as soon as you get into, I want this to look specifically like this, uh, it's only got so much database to work with to make it happen. Uh, Now, speaking of, I mean, I, honestly, in video game world, I think there's a big misconception about how uh, this footage, especially when Gemini, was it Gemini that was doing the ones where they were like, "Hey, look, game footage. We can make game footage with streaming." We talked about this a couple of weeks ago with Tom Oliver, and how that doesn't really work out. Like that doesn't really make sense. Like you can stream a video that looks like a game, but that's not a game. And I think that's still true, holds up true, even with this information, because it doesn't solve any problems for interactive games, doesn't solve any problems for cinematics in games, because you can't have rendered pixels. It just, there's no way that's going to be efficient. The fact that you can play a video game on a cell phone, I mean, why are we talking about thousands of computers and massive budgets and everything just to be able to do something a cell phone can do for free? Um, so it makes no argument at all. But what it does matter is when you get into film, VFX, because this would be like a studio's job, right? To go and make this shot cool. Like, um, so there's going to be some disruption in that front about what makes sense to do with a whole team of people and what makes sense to do with a prompt with footage that you can somehow legally justify that it's going to be okay.
Right.
Yeah, which is currently still the problem. Like,
Yeah, which is yeah, that's gonna take a while to sort out.
But this footage, which just came out like today or yesterday, is pretty interesting. If you have to, how can you take stuff that you're creating in Unreal and enhance it? Like you're taking footage that you're art directing. It follows the 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 prompts, the video, all the stuff that you're doing inside of Unreal, but then it adds all the complicated, expensive VFX stuff, and it lets you kind of iterate and change and be able to produce stuff. So
That's
I think
interesting.
this,
Yeah, using it as a post-production filter,
Mhm.
basically.
And I think that's where the argument I think gets more realistic. Like it's, how are you supposed to write in a paragraph of text that you want this kind of a shot, right? Like you're never going to be able to do that in text and explain it accurately without doing like hundreds of iterations. But if you can build the set, build the shot, create what the movements are supposed to be like, and then ask it to fill in areas that you think is better. And if it can actually do the job and produce something that is, you know, better than if you try to do it manually, then I can see that being a fitting in a pipeline, right? It can be a
Yeah,
thing.
I could see that being an argument for a pipeline.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
because
again,
it's
this
like
is yeah. Well, now the difference is you went from an Unreal render to a Seedance 2. You no longer have the ability to modify it. Your Seedance 2 render is now baked. I mean, obviously you can modify it and put it through Seedance 2 again, but there's a compressor that's going to come in through that eventually. Like it's going to, every time you do a process like that, a render, it's going to have a price tag. So you and still at the end of the day, you're going to be like, well, I didn't really like the way the explosion looked over here. I didn't really like the way the fire was moving. Well, okay, now you got to render it again, and there's a cost. So every time you want to do that, you got to pay money. Um, and how, where does that threshold? It makes sense in this shot where it's very VFX heavy, very complicated, but maybe on on a less interesting shot, how where are you going to go where you're gonna be like, you know what, I won't spend money. I'm just going to do it the other way. And this is especially true with, I think, live action footage, where art directing someone to have a perfect performance. There was one interesting post here that I never found. I was hoping to go back to it, but I never did actually get to it. That had someone who is a regular traditional filmmaker, and he's trying to figure out this. He's exploring this space as well, feeling very apprehensive because it's obviously difficult for him to swallow that this is suddenly so different and easy. When meanwhile he spent a whole lifetime trying to build up his career towards that specialty. And so one of the things that he talked about was just how he had to very carefully articulate how the performance was of one of they were two people sitting at a table at a cafe or something, and they were like debating about AI and like the challenges of AI, or at least where it's at and all this stuff. And one guy was saying pro AI, and the other one, she was saying, like, expressing the other side of it. Anyways, the details that he had to go through to be able to create the performance of the stress and the meaning and the emotion of how she was supposed to react and think during that time was quite complicated. Like, it really became, you had to act like an animator but through text, and then there was iterations, and like it became like a abstract form of what we already do in a weird way. um and and that was just to get that one shot to kind of feel emotionally pretty close. I mean, the continuity was pretty decent. There was issues where they were kind of between shots, they were kind of sitting in different poses and positions, but it would still look like the same people, at least. um but that kind of articulating the acting performance makes you question whether maybe that's not the best approach. I mean, if you just want two people candidly talking to each other, and you want to be able to build this feeling of real and human emotions and sense, then maybe just having two real actors talking to each other is cheaper and easier, and you're going to get something unexpected naturally, organically, that you're not going to find through an AI prompt that's just going to keep trying to create it very generically. So uh,
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's, I don't know. There's all kinds of thoughts, right? It's all over the place. But
Which
as an
makes sense
actor,
because yeah, since it's a tool, it's all in where and how you apply it, just like any other tool. That's why it's all over the place. It's not like a
yeah,
specific.
because you could be really lazy and just say, "Make me awesome stuff," but there's no value to it because it's like, what are you doing? Like, where are you going with this? Like, you have no story, you have no plot. And this is the argument that I keep bringing up over and over again, is I've always struggled watching films, particularly, like, I think Transformers was the Michael Bay films were really the ones that kind of made me go, I'm not really into these action shots. Like, they're kind of boring. Like, there's this constant magicalness to it where it's like, you know, yeah, they're doing these impressive moves and they're attacking and accomplishing their goal, but they're doing it like in a way that's so spectacularly perfect that you just lost your gravity of the situation. You've lost your sense of like there's any risk at all, because you just know that, like, it doesn't matter what happens right now, they're gonna do some amazing backflip and do the perfect shot. Um,
But but
all
if you're
right.
10 and you see that, you're like, "That is awesome. I gotta go buy that toy," then I
I
mean,
think you're speaking to an inner self right there.
right? You're finding the target audience right there.
Right.
Like I
I
know what you're saying.
I think you and what you've just brought up is excellent, because that's exactly the debate that's going on in my head when I look at this stuff too. Because I know what as someone who kind of has spent my career kind of in this area, I have my biases, I have my thoughts and my opinions about what all this stuff should be or isn't. And then you've got the actual real audience. And in the end of the day, it's the audience that pays the bills. They're the ones that are going to spend the money to see it or not see it. And those are the ones that are going to drive which way all this entertainment goes. And I can't control that. Doesn't matter what I think. In the end of the day, that's what's really going to be the push. But it does mean, as artists, we have to be prepared to pivot and be prepared to think, how do we create value? How do we apply value? What is our role? And how can we contribute? And I think some of the traditional workflows and pipelines that we've had previously do have to be questioned on whether that is the logical solution, and figure out whether. And that's what a lot of people are doing right now. They're trying to explore this to find out, does it make sense? Does it work? Is this possible? And how hard is it to do? So I still think it's kind of techie hard, but it's, different anyways, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's just it's so far, I mean, it's another tool, and it's like so particular to each situation. Like you said about like the example with the writer, where you basically have to articulate the whole thing. They're just two people. Well, it's like, if you're a writer and you have zero contact of like actors and have no idea how to set it up, well, then it's like, okay, then you have a tool that can do that for you, since you already can do the writing, But for somebody who has some tech experience or even any studio experience, it's like, oh, okay, I can get a couple of buddies to do the lines, and then, so it kind of comes down to the capabilities of each person approaching the situation.
Yeah. And
but it's definitely not a fix-all, like how sometimes it's being promoted. It's just, you got to know when and when to use a tool.
Yeah, and disregarding a lifetime of practice and skill is a mistake. I mean, like, there's a reason why we're all honing in our skills very carefully into a specific direction. It's because it's a difficult area to master. And, to throw that away and say, oh, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
Inevitably, it's going to catch up with itself, right? Like, you're going to realize that, no, there's a reason why this is hard to do. And it's not just the tool technical side of it. It's about the artistic direction of understanding how to entertain an audience. And, that's a skill in its own, in its own way. So this particular person did a James Bond, and this guy does not have audio. And that's because Seedance actually does audio too, right? So there's a lot of interesting elements there. But he's the one that actually talks about, this guy, from what I know, already has done a fair bit of filmmaking before. So he's not like completely
illiterate.
Yeah.
On the topic, yeah.
He was trying to create something that had that James Bond feel, and he had a series of shots, and he put them together and composited them in a way that makes a good scene. So like, in the end of the day, you end up with a pretty decent scene. He did pretty good. But you start to wonder where all this footage is coming from. I think there already is like a James Bond scene where they're riding motorbikes through cities and towns and stuff. And you can't help but like think like, well, what's unique and what's just being stolen?
Right. Yeah.
Grabbing random footage like this.
What's generated and what's been copyright already?
Yeah, like, well, yeah, what are they just like literally just wrapping a different image on top of existing footage? But you can see the continuity of these camera cuts, even though he's probably done a fair bit of prompts and a fair bit of shots and moved shots together, there's quite a decent amount of continuity. People feel like they're correct. The time of day feels like it's correct. There's some weirdness that starts to happen here with how these shots work, because this continuity is a bit off. People start to, absorb into buildings and things a little bit too easily. But it's so much more accurate than it was in the previous version, right? Like, where literally cars would be doing backflips or completely disappearing. They're all staying together. So that's a huge leap of problems that used to be there but seem to be no longer an issue. There's still a bit of a wacky continuity issues here, though. I mean, you start to get a little disorganized. Seems to be the common problem where you're just like, where are we now? What happened? Because like the train didn't quite show up in the right time, and I don't know, things are just not quite making sense shot from shot. Um, but if you watch the actual James Bond motorbike sequences right away, like I wish I had the footage. I don't know. Maybe I can find it. I forget
I
what
mean, I know it's in Skyfall right at the beginning, but I
Skyfall.
mean, I think he does. He does. I mean, there's. Oh man, trying to think which ones have the motorcycle chase. I know Skyfall for sure. It's been a while.
See if I can find it because it's interesting to watch the side by side, or at least the one after the other. But like what I right away when I watch this, what I start to notice is um just they're like actually really riding motorbikes. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something a bit different about it. All of a sudden you're like, oh look, he's skidding and he's got a little thing and you're like, oh that's kind of cool.
Right, like all the body reactions and stuff like that. It's not quite there in AI. I mean, until
Yeah.
everybody like floods all that data in, and then it obviously like, oh, okay, you know,
Yeah.
maybe eventually it'll get there. I don't know, but you have that feel like even in a suit jacket, right there
Yeah.
in that shot compared to the other shot, like there's no suit jacket flapping around while he's on the Vespa, like,
Right.
or at least I didn't see it anyway. But
Like this just for me feels more like, oh yeah, they're really like riding a motorbike. Doesn't just seem all VFX.
yeah, you know, like it's gonna get to a point though, like how you said, how the audience dictates it. So like you got to think for the generation now watching this, it's like we've had years to develop bias because we've seen so many real movies, right? Or and even the generation like before ours that like before CGI, where they're using like even the original Star Wars with all the with they're like splicing film and everything to do this rather than like a green screen and stuff like that. So like it's gonna get to the point where younger generations, I mean, I think this is just opinion, that like younger generations are eventually gonna be like, I'm okay with it looking fake because I mean they don't have that their bias might be like that's what they grew up with, right? So they're gonna be like, that's my appeal.
Yes.
I don't know.
And to continue that thought that you have, one of the interesting things that my wife just told me this morning, which I didn't even realize was I've never thought about it, but apparently YouTube Kids, the YouTube it's a channel that's designed specifically just to play YouTube Kids content. It's kind of curated, but not really. Is people are complaining that it's mostly overrun by AI content, and it's just like weird hallucinatory. Snakes are morphing into elephants, and things are colorful and weird, but not really making a lot of logical sense. And they're still making millions of views because with YouTube Kids, nobody's really giving it thumbs down or anything. Like,
Yeah,
it's
is
not
your
being
4-year-old
curated.
really giving you the feedback you want? You
Right.
know?
Yeah. It's like parents are just sitting their kids in front of the TV and walking away, and it's just
Yeah,
playing.
here, go be distracted.
Yeah. So I think
Yeah,
I'm gonna. No, I'm not gonna be able to. I'm mutant Stan. So I think I'm not really sure where that's going to evolve to, but I do know that like a lot of people find that disconcerting to have their kids watching a lot of AI footage. But at the same time, do the kids care? I have no idea. I don't have that problem. My kids are too old now. And are they going to grow up weird? I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe they're going to have a easier time digesting weird AI hallucinations, or maybe they're going to be more accurate at identifying when it is AI versus when it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't classify it as like weird. I would just say that like it's just each generation has its own bias as far as art direction, I would say. And there might be a new art direction coming that it's like a half blend of real and AI, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot to be said about it, but like I always refer to, I still really enjoy those '70s car chase films where cars are
Yeah,
jumping off of ramps and jumping over rivers and stuff. I mean, that's just cool. Like to see like real cars and real stunt actors doing this crazy stuff, and you're like, dang, that's just real. Like you
yeah.
can't, no fake effects going on here. And I
I
love
miss
the way,
real locations. Like it's just like,
right?
man, hey, I was there. I remember seeing that. Like that's a
Yeah,
real film location, not CGI or any kind of
yeah. Like
studio.
there's that gravity, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
there's definitely an attraction there, and I don't think you can deny it. Um, But it doesn't mean that this stuff won't get utilized. Like if especially watching this James Bond one, I mean, just the shot where like, oh, we need him to throw the spaghetti over his shoulder and
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 it
it
like,
lands on his
yeah,
face,
yeah.
right? Like I could just see somebody going, wow, all right, we're just gonna do the movement like he did it, and then we'll just put in this shot where he gets hit or whatever. Like it's that those kind of individual shots will probably be more likely to just be inserted, or like I said originally, like B-roll kind of shots where they're very complicated to set up a B-roll shot, and it's just like a little clip of information. Usually they're not shot on the context of the scene anyways, and they look at that, see that,
Yeah, like he completely did a 180 when he went to
yeah,
throw
he
it.
threw it towards the building, and then it just went away from the building. I'm like, what do you do about that? Well, you gotta re-render the shot. Sorry, it's completely wrong.
We just start seeing this generation of like it's like edited where it's like that moment where like the stunt doubles like 6'8" and like the actual actors like 5'8", and you just see the edit, which is like cut, you just start seeing all these weird edits and
Yeah, I know, and I think that's, yeah, that's just gonna be part of, I mean, it's not necessarily gonna be part of what maybe good films are made of, but it's gonna be what these crappy films are gonna be made of, and you're just gonna be like, "Oh, well, they don't really understand pacing and timing very good, so that's what they got." I don't know, it's all very, yeah, anyways, lots of floaty kinda thoughts about what's going on exactly here.
right, it's the new thing on the block, and everybody, obviously people are trying to market it because there's this the world we live in, you got to make money.
Yeah. Well, and there's, yeah, it'll go where the money is going, right?
Right.
Um, but yeah,
But
you can just see, like, all these this is me just scrolling through my LinkedIn now, and there's all this footage. Just, I mean, I have filtered it to Seedance to be fair, but it's just so many people are all trying to either explore about it or talk about it or just understand what exactly it means, what's going to happen next. People, it's funny how the one I'm scrolling to now have the least amount of video footage. Um, it's like I'll go back up, I guess. Um,
yeah, look at that, like his suit coat's not even flapping in the wind.
yeah, no, that's a very interesting observation.
Some of them are, some of them are, some of them aren't.
He's got a very tight coat on. Yeah, you're right. Look at that.
I mean, he could have a buttoned, but I mean, normally he
Good
doesn't.
point. I've
It's not
never
that.
noticed that the wind is not a factor in these scenes. There are sometimes, but you're right. In those ones I've seen currently, it is just completely windless. Oh, there you go. That's got some
Yeah,
wind on the
some
face.
do, some don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's like, okay, like I grew up in a small school, right? So I grew up like hand taking most notes. And then when I got to college, it's like everybody was taking notes on typing, like their computer. And I
Yeah.
still have notebooks from college that like I hand took all of my math notes and everything, but like the whole
Right.
class was like laptops. So it's just like it's gonna be the thing where it's never gonna go away because there's still gonna be an audience that like the old school feel.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess it all goes to what you're saying. It's just like it follows the money and it follows the mass appeal. So it's like if this is a trend that takes off, well, it might be around to stay. But
Yeah. I mean, it's they're doing things that can be really difficult and expensive to do as a shot. So, I mean, you can't deny the fact that people will be like, whether, especially for situations where performance isn't the issue. Because I mean, technically, if you think about it, they've already doing this. They're taking stunt doubles, or they're taking actors replacing their faces, or doing various tricks already to kind of make the thing work. But this is a much easier way to kind of just wrap a face on a different performance altogether. The biggest challenge is mostly got to do with uh, copyright issues and where are you getting your content, your source content from. Um, but like, yeah, and like, are you going to be able to get your source to be able? Are you going to be able to present this publicly without having to worry about lawsuits later?
Right. Yeah. Like, is it going to be 100%? Did it generate someone that looks like somebody else? Like, that's going to be the big thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's mostly the big scare right now is the copyright of like
Right.
how I was remember reading that a little bit about with Expedition 33 how they used it generative AI for concept art, and the argument was um like AI can't own it, like it's a weird ownership issue.
Yeah. Like, yeah, they can't just steal it and then without they were using the excuse, if I'm following the same train of thought here, they were using the excuse that it was just learning. And if you're learning, you can't really get them in trouble because technically that's what we all do. We all read books and we learn, and then we don't pay copyright fees to read a book. Um,
Hmm.
Sometimes we buy the book, but I guess that depends on how you look at it. Uh, but then it was being disproven because you could literally just say, give me in a prompt, write the Harry Potter book, and it would just write verbatim the Harry Potter book. And you're like, okay, well, we're kind of not really learning, we're just stealing. And that
Right.
was what the argument was that was putting forward on courts. And they're still trying to figure out what the answer is. So, it's the same story here. Like, it's not a book, it's footage, but like whose footage was it? And did they give you permission to be able to reproduce it and use it? But then how does that compare to like artists that take inspiration? It's a really, really messy area. And obviously the
Hmm.
AI companies have no intention to want to lose that fight because that really is their bread and butter of how they're making this stuff have content. And
Yeah.
then you've got the other problem of this is all in China. So, they could be like, oh, yeah, sorry. Did it in.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, now you have country different laws in different countries and stuff like that. We'll have that a little bit. Like I think I don't know for sure, but I think there's a lot more restrictions, I think. Oh, I don't want to say for sure, but I know certain countries it's like you're more restricted of like what you can film and what you can't film. Like even just like capture on your phone. So,
Yeah, it's true.
yeah.
I mean, Google's argument on this one is that they have access to the rights of all the content on YouTube. So they do have a ton of video footage that they can work with legally.
Yeah, I mean that
Um,
hurts. Yeah. Then
right.
where do you like you want to put your stuff out there, right? Like you want to put a be real of your stuff out there on YouTube, right? Like you're trying to showcase it, but you don't want to give it to them. So now you have the argument of like, well, how do I make this mine and not theirs?
Yeah. And like back to that reference of the kids YouTube, um, the official response from YouTube was we don't filter AI. So like they weren't even like apologetic or anything. They're just like, yeah, we're just not doing it. we're not solving this problem for you.
Yeah.
And then and the
Well,
parents were
because
like, that's very frustrating.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things that it's like they think they have the majority on their side. Like, how many people are going to show up to the town hall to fight that? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 100? And they're going to be like, well, you know, nobody's going to fight that because at the end of the day, here's the tablet. Go distract yourself. I gotta go. You know, like what kind
Yeah,
of
no, that's right. Yeah, yeah. They're only gonna work so hard before they're like, well, it's either that or what do I get them? What are my options? Like, let them free reins on YouTube. They gotta at least it's gonna be content that's not gonna have like violence and swearing and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we might see like a generation now where it's just like, well, it's since it's in the parents' hands, the parents might just be like, okay, if the kid's old enough, it's just like, okay, no screen, go read a book. You might see different parenting approaches. This is a whole other topic, but
That's true though. Yeah, different
it's
opinions. Whether people actually care or not is the whole important part of it.
right. Because
This is
unfortunately, like the majority might not care, but then you could have the minority and now the minority has to pivot because, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that could very well be the case in some, like, even with video games, people like the niche games. Like anything that's like retro has a market, maybe not a full market, but there's like a market for the retro stuff. And it might be the same idea where you have like market for real life footage of action and people who are doing stunts and stuff. So that could very well be the case. I know that footage like this is probably disruptive or disturbing for people who are taking animation, just because it has so much continuity with shot to shot. And but like I think it's important to remember that. Well, first of all, I don't like these shots because that just feels weirdly wrong. Like, see, we're back to this feet shot again. Like, there's a lack of direction in terms of
Right.
continuity and logic here. And it comes back to storytelling and the importance of making sure that you have something worthwhile to talk about in order to actually make it. But from a perspective of like, somebody who does the work of making a story and doesn't have the budget to be able to hire people to be able to make all these shots, they're probably going to create a story out of it that's going to be compelling in some respect. I don't know. Maybe this
It
is
just, yeah, it creates the
like,
argument kind of like along the lines of what you're saying is that like, is art truly something that has to be crafted versus generated? Like,
yeah,
is it something that has to be like, for instance, like pottery or like a sculptor, right? How he used to do it by hand, and even 3D, it's still by hand. Like it's digital, but it's still like a by hand thing. Like, are they going to classify generative art as its own thing? Well, I mean, it's still classified, I guess, as its own thing, but at the end
yeah,
of the day, like, can you call it art when, like you said, it doesn't have that um it doesn't have that logic, it doesn't have that continuity. It's just kind of pulling from all sorts of things. So
yeah,
can it be classified as art if it's not like, here's the story, did it fit the story? Did it tell the story?
yeah. And like, yeah, at the end of the day, you have to captivate an audience. Is this going to captivate audiences once we kind of get over the sensationalism of just, you know, bizarroness? Like, are people going to be like, yeah, I want to watch more of this bizarroness that makes no sense? Or do they want an actual story where it's like, I want to have empathy for this character and I want to have empathy for what that performance of that character is rather than just sensationalism? So I think it's the same questions as before. It's not going to make a difference in the argument where, in the end of the day, it's just AI slop. But it because it has the continuity to be able to perform fill in shots and replace and repair things, especially if you're able to art direct it and you're able to have uh, provided reference footage of what you want it to look like. Um, it's going to have some application of use cases where you're going to be like, okay, well, I have everything I need to be able to say, can you make cut for this, or can you make a B-roll for that, or can you do this? And it will, if it produces it in a way that you can't even tell that it's there or not there, then that will probably be what it'll be used for, because it'll be like, okay, well, that saves us a lot of headaches from having to figure out how to do this manually.
Right. Yeah, kind of like the car chase, how it's just like they prepared it on a reel. They just might not have had access to any kind of visual effects knowledge and was just like, okay, this is a tool I can use. I've done the artist work of crafting this scene, but I can only get it so far to make it like, okay, now I want to bring the story to life a little bit more, So
Yeah, yeah, and that's where those long-term skills of storytelling and crafting and knowing how to compose and build a shot so that it has interesting appeal is going to come into play if you want to tell your story instead of someone else's story, which is essentially what a lot of these probably doing, are just telling someone else's. Here's some pretty shots I stole from something else that some other art director did, and that's
right.
different. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, there you go. I'm getting a little sick and tired of watching the.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. I mean,
I'm like, after a while, you're like, I'm just adding to the algorithm on LinkedIn. provide more.
Unfortunately, yeah.
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 But yeah, I don't know. We managed to talk for 50 minutes there, so that's pretty good. Managed to cover the topic, get all the struggles and the frustrations in my head out
That's
about
good.
where I'm currently at, because it's a tricky spot right now. I don't even, and like, going back to the whole concept about whether this affects game development. At the moment, I don't see how it has a huge effect, except for maybe in virtual production. But this is unfortunately, you know, ever since they started doing any kind of digital images that kind of look like, oh, they're actually real images. Um, everyone's nitpicking little problems, but at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, well, we're gonna eventually get to a point where they're gonna make footage, and the footage will be usable in some context. So then it's like, well, now what are you gonna do? Like, where are we going from there? So I think it's always important as an artist in any kind of industry, really, is to research, understand, try to think about it constructively, and make educated decisions about where you should go in terms of how do you fit in this place, and what are the priorities. And some of the things that we try to do in our real-time department is focus on what is the bigger picture. We want to talk about storytelling, we want to talk about lighting and pacing, timing. I mean, these are elements taken from animation and from modeling and all these other aspects. But we're really trying to focus on how can we make this so that it has a practical value that kind of lives longer than just the age of the tool. But it's still there's still a lot of unknowns, because yeah, where exactly, even with virtual production and things like that, where is it going? Where is it going to be in the next year? There's a lot of unknown answers for that. So it's not over yet in terms of trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
But today, in one of our previous class, I was able to help Victor get his Firefly character to follow his character. We used a spring arm. You usually use spring arm for character blueprints to do cameras. And we used to keep the Firefly close to the player character, and it created that really nice, like, fluid follow through, so that the Firefly was flying in a loop, but it was also like dragging behind and then catching up.
Nice.
It was a moment of like, hey, this is fun. Like, that was good. You have a success moment, and it looks nice.
Those are the best.
Right. So there's still lots of elements of joy to be had, and I think a lot of the arguments that are happening about this whole discussion are like, I don't want to take away the fun. I'm having fun doing this. This is the art of it. Is the journey of trying to figure it out and the time it takes. And it's the same arguments we had with the programming.
Mm-hmm.
It's applied in all these different applications. And there was a discussion about how programmers are like, you need to take time to make a program, even if it's software, because everybody has terrible decisions when they start off. And they come up with an idea, but the idea isn't good yet. It needs time to flesh it out. You need to chew away at it and think about it, question it, reapply it, figure out how your answer is solving a question. And that just takes time. And so even if you have tools that speed up the process, you still need that time to go in there and think about it, flesh it out, decide, make creative decisions, and figure out where exactly you want that story how to make a meaningful story behind what you're trying to do.
Right.
And even if you make a good story, there's money to be made. I mean, if you just look at all the awards that K-pop demon hunters
K-pop demon hunters, I think, like you said.
And so, like, there's good stories are still very welcome and very much enjoyed. Even Zootopia 2, I really enjoyed. And so there's definitely value out there. Takes a lot of art, takes a lot of people, takes a lot of effort to make a good story that's worth watching and fun to watch. I think that's the principle that will remain.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, if all this stuff is being used not as a malicious way, like, I like the idea that, okay, for instance, like, I just getting into this, it's like I never would have been able to get even close to telling the stories that I want to tell, but through Blueprint, which is like, I mean, like, I'm sure when Blueprint came out, the same argument happened, was like, well, are you even coding? Like, but it's another tool that like someone who doesn't have those skills, like now you're on the stage, like now you can tell a story. Like it still takes tons of work, like you said, like you still have to learn it, you still have to chip away at it. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with like, I mean, somebody somewhere is gonna find a way to tell a good story using AI, but they are gonna have to chip away at it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, if they're just trying to tell a story and it used to be like 10 years ago, you couldn't, like that's, I think that's kind of cool that like people who normally couldn't tell stories can tell stories now. Like that's awesome.
And I think there's some truth to that in the aspect of games as well, where people who couldn't make games because they couldn't figure out how to get past XYZ because it's way too complicated, have outlets now to find ways to figure out how to connect the dots to be able to get the thing done that allows them to tell, or at least provide the gameplay idea that they have in their head too. So um, it's definitely an aspect that's going to exist in game development, but it's just not going to be affected in the same aspect as with film because of the fact that we don't deal with final pixel images in the same way. But it was one of the posts I saw on LinkedIn today. It literally talked about how they're like, if we are making prompts to make code, do we even need visual prompting, visual node-based scripting, if it's all just going to be handled in the back end? But then he countered that with like, that's why I've made this program. That's like basically takes programming and visualizes it with a node-based system so that you can look at code through node-based stuff, and it lets you kind of compartmentalize it and see it in a node-based structure, but it still has chunks of code in it that you would be able to work with, through prompts and things like that. But these chunks would be a little more visibly. So it's a hybrid between blueprint and code. And I thought that was kind of like, oh man, well, maybe this is one of the concepts and ideas of how we evolve towards allowing artists and programmers to kind of coexist in the same sort of realm and make things that work.
Yeah,
It's just one of those many things that come up that you're like, oh, that's kind of cool.
for sure.
All right. Well, thanks, Eric, for keeping the conversation going with me. I do really appreciate the feedback. I actually would have liked all kinds of different people's opinions and on this, even people who are like, against it or pushing against it, just to hear what it is. I don't want to be like, too much agreeing isn't solving anything. But
That's
at the
true.
same time,
Yeah, we got to find some antithesis. You got to find some add it to the crowd out here. I know what you're saying.
Exactly. So maybe one day, I keep talking about it. Maybe one day I'll be able to get a nice chat with Daniel, who's head of the VFX department, and we can have a proper discussion about his perspective and his thoughts, since he knows much more in depth about the interworkings of how hard these shots are and what's involved and how viable any of these solutions really do stand up, especially when you get into render layers and dealing with like compositing problems and stuff like that. I know those are often concerns that you kind of overlook when you're just looking at pretty images. So maybe we'll have another session. We'll talk about it a bit more next week. I think we're just going to get back into getting into game development, but today I got to talk about the Seedance revelation that's happening going on in the
and who knows, in a few more months, when this channel's still pretty new, so like as the crowd pool grows too, like bring it back up in 3 months, 4 months, see what happens.
Do a flashback and say, remember when I was talking about this? Boy, was I ever wrong.
Man.
True. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate you being here.
No problem.
We'll wrap it up and we'll see you next time.
All right. Take care, Simon.
All right. Cheers.